Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Reserved Investments. And always remember, there is a barrier to entry that pretty much permeates through most of the antiques and collectibles trade. For instance, a lot of you watching this channel right now, you collect, invest, and you potentially buy and sell pop culture-based collectibles. Whether we're talking about video games, comic books, vintage toys, collectible card games, even in certain instances, vinyl records, movies, whatever it is, you're pretty much buying, selling, collecting, and investing, and possibly speculating in mass-produced collectibles. The barrier to entry to get involved in that market is quite low. Anybody with a smartphone, anybody with a computer can look up the value of a vintage Transformer toy, can look up the value of a Pokemon card, can look up the value of a video game, of a comic book, and they can find the approximate value of that item fairly quickly just by visiting eBay. Now, this brings me to the crux of today's video. I have a lot of people that are reaching out to me stating, hey, Sean, I'm a small part-time thrifter or eBay reseller operating in these markets. I found your channel. I want to know, how can I expand my horizons? How can I branch out to other more undiscovered collecting categories where if I go to a yard sale at 8 o'clock in the morning on some boring Saturday and somebody puts out a Nintendo with 20 games for $20 and I'm not the first one there, obviously my competition, because the barrier to entry is so low for pop culture collectibles and knowing the value of them, they're going to scoop that up before I even get there. So how can I make money in these markets? What tips do you have to offer? Because now I want to branch out in other markets so that now I can compete more on a more developed scale, meaning I can go after other collecting categories or markets in the antique side of the equation. Well, here's my first tip to you. Understand that you should be reading and buying a general antique and collectible price guide on a yearly basis. Now, this is a very small financial investment. There are several yearly price guides devoted to the entire antiques and collectibles trade that are readily available on Amazon and are produced by a plethora of different publishers. There is Cobble's yearly price guide. There is Warman's, which I am holding up here, and there is also the Antique Trader yearly price guide. All of these price guides can be bought on Amazon.com or at your favorite bookseller for most likely less than $30 a piece, and you can get the most current edition. Now, this is vital because if you buy a price guide like this and you start paging through it and you start being exposed to a lot of these other collecting categories, antique markets that you may not even know exist, guess what? You're going to get the history of these markets. You're going to get pictures of items that have sold and for how much they sold for, and you're going to be able to use that to your advantage because now you're going to be able to go, oh, I encountered a quilt at this particular antique mart. I remember reading that particular price guide that I get every year, and it had a section on quilts in it. That quilt that I'm seeing at this antique mart looks almost like this quilt here that is featured in this particular price guide and sold for over $2,000. This is how you build your knowledge. You get the knowledge from the books, then you go out and you put it in practical use, meaning you start going to flea markets, you start going to maybe local auctions. Maybe you go to antique marts. Maybe you also still go to garage sales. But the more you interact, the more that you visualize and see these items in person that you also remember reading about, that's how you're able to pretty much connect the dots and go, oh, I'm going to take a gamble on this item. I remember reading about it. Now, this is where you got to use caution. Obviously, most people do not own valuable antiques in their house. Most people do not have investment grade antiques that they're going to put out at their yearly yard sale or garage sale. This is why you're most likely to find collectibles, household goods, items of a lower value at most yard sales. But if you start going to antique fairs, if you start going to antique marts, if you start going to auctions in your area, again, this is where you're going to come in contact with most antiques. Knowledge is power in these markets. If something comes up for bid and you recognize it and you're okay spending just a little bit of money to get a learning lesson, take the risk and buy it. If it's under $20, I usually tell people, if it's under $20 and they are 50% sure they can make money on it, they should take the risk. Just spend the 20 bucks. Even if you spend the $20 on that item, you take it home, you list it on eBay, you don't sell it at all. You at least learned something. You got knowledge regarding that market and that collecting category. Always remember the golden rule. An expert is somebody who knows more and more about less and less. I'm an expert in the antiques and collectibles trade. I know more and more about less and less of these markets as a result. And that's what helps me tremendously, because while I know the entire antiques and collectibles trade, I can research most categories if I don't know something. I also know how to specialize. I know how to expand my horizons, and I know how to make money in these markets. And at the end of the day, if you take a step back and you analyze what you know and compare it to what you don't know, where the risk is, it's in the markets that you don't know. It's in the markets where probably all of you watching this video, if you've ever gone to a garage sale, if you ever gone to a yard sale, if you ever gone to an antique mart, I can assure you this happened. At one of those sales, unbeknownst to you, that you walked into, you pretty much already left thousands of dollars worth of valuable items behind because you did not have enough knowledge to take advantage of those particular markets at the time. If you really want to expand your knowledge in the antiques and collectibles trade, you never ever stop learning. Yearly price guides are a very good way to understand all the collecting categories that make up these markets and get at least limited exposure to them. Never, ever leave money on the table. And those of you that simply specialize in one collecting category or a few collecting categories each and every year, you are leaving a lot of money on the table. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you think in the comment section below.